Are cover letters a waste of your time? I'm here to bust that myth for you and understand when it's appropriate to use a cover letter and when it might not be appropriate to use a cover letter. I'm Tony McBride, a career transition coach, and one of the most regular questions I'm asked by people is, should I use a cover letter for this application? And the reality is, for the majority of applications, it really shouldn't be the case that you need a cover letter. And I'm going to go through why that's the case and what the exceptions are in this video. So watch to the end so you can make sure you're familiar with all those exceptions and you know exactly when it's important to use a cover letter and when not to. So first of all, let's focus on why not, okay? So if I'm saying the majority of applications don't need one, let's talk about the why. First of all, you should let your CV do the heavy lifting and tailor that CV for every application that you've got. So for example, if you're going for a private sector role and you want to make sure that you've got the skills associated with that CV, make sure that you're highlighting those skills in your CV. Make sure you're talking in your bio about your aspiration to work in that industry or that role. And make sure your work experience leans into what that job requires. That takes time and effort in order to do all of those actions. So I'd much rather see you do that in your CV than invest in the time in your cover letter. The flip side of it as well is that recruiters don't necessarily have the time to read a cover letter, neither do the hiring managers, especially in today's job markets where they're processing really high volumes of applications. So it's important to make sure that you invest that time in the CV because that is what you're going to be scored and assessed on instead of a cover letter. That typically applies to the private sector. And as I said, there is going to be some exceptions to that rule, which I'm going to go through now. But first of all, I want to talk about your time. And it's important that you're investing your time in the right things. So if you try and do a CV and a cover letter and tailor both to try and impress in some extra way, there are much better things that you could be doing with your time that you could invest better into your job search strategy. And if you're interested in knowing what those are, follow me, hit that subscribe button, or follow me on LinkedIn and you'll be able to see more of the tips I share that'll help you move forward with your strategy rather than investing in cover letters every time. So I said earlier there are 4 exceptions to the rule with cover letters that I would typically stand by. The first of which is in the public sector. So with the public sector, they score applications slightly differently. And you'll notice the job descriptions are very detailed in the public sector because they're really clear on what their requirements are and they want to find the right candidates. So with your CV or your application form, you get to answer the questions about the literal way that you meet the requirements. But in your cover letter stroke supporting statement, this is where you get to bring it a little bit more to life using the STAR framework. And they use that to assess your capability in the job applications. So it's handled very differently. It could probably be a video of its own someday. But that explains the rationale for why you need a supporting statement because they do use that to assess you against your vacancy, whereas they don't use that typically in private sector roles. The next exception is the charity sector. And the reason it's different is because they want to know more about what motivates you personally to work for that kind of charity. Whereas in the private sector, typically they're looking to see that you have the skills and experience to do that role. In the charity sector, they want to know if you've got the skills, experience, and motivation to work in that charity. So make sure in a cover letter you talk about why that charity motivates you, why that gives you energy, why it aligns to your values and your purpose, so that they can see more than just the skills and actually the alignment to what their vision looks like. So it's really important in the charity sector. The third exception is academia. And the reason why the academic sector focuses more on a cover letter and requires that is because when you're applying for typical academic roles, you have to list your publications, you have to list your research that you've done in the past and showcase all of those skills and experience. So in order for them to understand you deeper, they want to know the context of what your research and publications are. They want to know what your future plans are for research and publications. And that needs more than just a standard CV. So this is why academia typically asks for a cover letter as well. And the final exception that can apply to everyone is if you're doing a complete career pivot. Okay? And I'm not talking a transferable skills move. I'm talking about completely different career. So this could be deciding that you've got experience in project management, but wanting to move into a completely different career after having no work experience, but completing all of the training, all of the courses, and all of the external work to help you become considered in that role. Let's say, for example, you're going in at a senior project manager level and you're trying to become an entry-level business analyst. You need to explain that story, and a cover letter gives you the opportunity to do that. What I would say is that for small scale changes, the tailoring of the CV using a skills based approach is the best way to do that. You do not need a cover letter to explain that, because your cover letter will not be viewed in the same way. Whereas your skills will get you noticed quicker when it comes to the hiring managers and recruiters looking at that. Because if you've already got the transferable skills, you don't need the cover letter to explain the pivot. Okay? So those are the 4 exceptions. As a reminder, it is public sector, charity sector, academia, and when you have a complete career pivot. So if you don't fall into those 4 umbrellas, and when you're applying for a job and you see a cover letter box, if it's not mandatory, don't write a cover letter. Tailor your CV and you will get more results. Okay? So as a reminder, click that subscribe button, follow me on socials, and you'll learn more tips like this from me that'll help you land your next role. Good luck in your job searches.